Hello creative ones and welcome back to Gel Printing Fundamentals. I'm Michelle Brown with Mixed Media Art and I'm really excited to be sharing this video series with you. Now in this episode we're going to talk about image transfers. Now I did think long and hard about whether to include this in a Gel Printing Fundamentals class because I really did want to make sure we covered the basics before we got into anything too advanced. But I know that's one of the questions we get time and time again is about image transfer. So I'm going to show you a couple of things to consider. We're going to start with a very simple level, but it really does take quite a bit of experimentation. So we need to have a clean plate. We need to have some good glossy images. We need to have a really smooth, even layer of paint. And then we also need to be patient and let our layers dry. So let's jump in with the basics and see how we go. Okay, and of course, don't forget to get our hair tied up. Okay, so as I said, when it comes to image transfers, there's quite a few things we need to consider. So we need to have some really nice glossy images. These are from a glossy fashion magazine. We need to have a really clean gel plate. So I'm going to get some wipes. We'll just give it an extra little wipe. So this is one of the cases where we don't want anything that's already there transferring onto our image. There we go. And we want a good stack of paper, our roll-off for our brayer. Our brayer is nice and clean as well, doesn't have any bits on it. And we've got our paints. And I'm going to be using some of the newer ones that I've had to play with because I know these ones are nice and smooth and will work well as long as our white one. Okay, now that we've given that a wipe, just let that air off a bit. Okay, so like I said, the images that I've chosen are really gloss and they've also got a really high contrast as well. So that seems to make quite a bit of difference. And you seem to be able to only use the image once. So let's start off with perhaps one of them and then see how we go. So clean plate, starting off with a good even layer. So this is the challenge. We need it quite thin, but we also need it really consistent. So I've been not using the whole plate because I'm finding getting a whole layer of paint can be a little bit tricky. Now I think there's something on there. Let's see how we go. Getting it nice and even. Putting our image down. Then I was using a bit of scrap paper so that we could really make sure that image is transferred. So cleaning off our brayer and then pushing down really firmly. And I just found this scrap piece of paper helped. If your image didn't cover the whole plate, then it just stops from getting paint everywhere. Okay, so we take that layer off. That's our sacrificial one. I can see that there's a bubble in that, so I'm going to, let's see, can we get it off? We might just give it a little bit of a rub around it. So again, that's something to consider is how you put the image down, have it nice and flat. Okay, and then as always, let's just check. We can see that that paint is coming up where we want it to. There we go. So this might be a little bit hard to see. We can just see there that we've got the image. So we've got the hat, we've got the lady and her two legs. So all the bits that were lighter behind have taken the paint off, and these bits have essentially resist the paint. Now we've got a nice thin layer, and we do want this to be a little bit drier before we add our next layer. So here I'm going to use just a straight white. And again, we don't want this too thick. So this is where all of our practice really does come in. So we want to get a thin layer. Again, we want to do it nice and lightly so we don't disturb our image underneath. We want that to really bond to it and pick it all up. So again, putting our paper down, I've got a nice, slightly thick, smooth sheet. And again, really using our brayer press it down really firmly. Now this is the time where you do need to be that little bit more patient. You might even want to leave it there to check. Again, we can pull it up, check that that looks pretty good, and we can see, you just see there that that image is coming up. So I'm happy that we've got the bottom layer dry enough, the top layer thin enough, and there we go. So we've got an image transfer. Now we can see there's a couple of little sort of glitches in it. And so I'm not sure whether that was just the way I had put the paper down, whether I need to just be more careful to make sure I got all the air bubbles out, or whether there's actually some slight variation in the gel plate. So there we go. That one's worked okay. Let's set that one aside and try another one. So again, I'm happy that that's fairly clean because we got that print off. So again, clear plate, gloss image. I really want to try this one. I think this one's going to be interesting because it's got some bits in the background as well. So let's try and get a really even layer of paint. So we really need to lift that brayer up, get it as thin as we can. So I'm actually wondering if that's going to be a little bit too thin, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And this is where you really just need to be really patient, experiment and play. So what's the right amount of paint? Is there a paint that works better than others? Now I'm worried that's a little bit thick, so I'm just going to brayer it off a little bit more. Okay, now I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to put this down. Now this time let's do it like we were, putting contact on a book. Let's get our sacrifice sheet. Really press it down from the middle, working out. So if there is any bubbles, hopefully we're getting them out of the way. We really want to get every bit of that image into the plate. Okay, so again, checking the corner. You can see we've got some interesting things happening there. It does still look a little bit damp, so let's just give it a bit more of a rub with our hands. What is this looking like? Okay, this is quite a solid bit there, so we pull that off, and yep, we can see some really interesting things through there. So some of the pattern in the dress, some of the steps in the background. So again, just giving it a little bit of time to dry, and then we'll be straight back. Okay, so I've given this perhaps 2, 3, 5 minutes to dry. I can see now when I pick it up and put the light on it that it's not quite as glossy. So I think that is ready to go. Again, let's get our white. Just that. Really delicately moving it around. So we've got the paint down, we've got the image really firmly there. We can see that it's looking like it's transferred well, it's dried well. Okay, we've got that layer down. We want that to bond with the image. And then get this down. And again, give this a really firm press. Okay, and we're going to pause again, let this dry for a few minutes, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've left this for a good 2 to 3 minutes. That's long enough for me, rather impatient. I'm happy that I'll give that little corner a check. We can see here that we've got some of that image of the stairs. So let's pull it up. And there we go. So isn't that interesting? We've got really good definition here where the image was quite distinct and we had all that white that made a really big difference. And then here, like it's worked when we had the light bits. So yeah, it really does depend on that image. and if it's got some nice light and dark bits on it. Okay, let's give it one more go, this image, because again it's got some real distinctive bits on it. Check the plate is clean. So certainly something to play and experiment with. If you've got enough paint, if you've got it an even coverage, your plate clean, and just playing with all these different variables will really give you different results. Okay, let's pop it down in the middle. Get our piece. Really firm press so make sure there's no bubbles in there, and also this sacrificial piece, so we can help pull off all the other bits. Don't know where that's come from. Interesting. Okay, I reckon that's not too bad. But I also noticed there was a bit of ink around it, so what I might even do is just with a baby wipe, just come around so I've got the light and take off some of that excess there. Let's clean it up a little bit. Again, just giving it a few minutes to dry off a little bit. Okay. Let's give it a minute to dry and then we'll be back. Okay, so again, giving that a couple of minutes to dry, and when I look at it in the light, I can see that it's all looks pretty consistent. Let's stick with the white since we're getting the hang of that. And then again, nice even layer. Just using that nice light pressure. Oops. Getting it down, pressing it from the middle out so we don't have any air bubbles as the paper contacts the gel plate. Okay, I'm going to pause and we'll let this dry. So let this dry for a few minutes. Let's test the corner. Yep, we're happy that that's picking up the background. And there we go. So we can see there some of that text is transferred really well. Again, I think the paint might have been a little bit thicker there, so we can see that that area didn't come up. So again, that just shows that consistency of the paint really makes a big difference. So the things to consider when we're printing our image transfers: our gel plate's clean. We want a really nice, smooth, even layer. And again, try it with a few different paints, even the different colours, different images. We want something nice and glossy, preferably fairly high contrast. You can see there that the words have come out really well. And then this has come out with a little bit of detail in it, but we are losing that detail. And then making sure we really push that image into the plate with the brayer, then let that dry when we pull it up, put down our next layer, again, put our paper down, really make sure that's well stacked, let it dry, give it a bit of pressure while it's drying, and then pull it up. So I hope that's given you just some basics of image transfer to get you started. So there really are so many variables when it comes to image transfer and gel printing. So like I said, it's still not really part of the fundamentals. I hope you do a lot of the other exercises first so you can get the hang of getting the paint spread out smoothly, having the paints that don't have too many lumps in them, so newer paints really help, and then just getting the feel of that pressure, being patient to let the images dry, try a few different images, what works well, different papers, different paints. There are lots of things to consider when we do the image transfer. So as always, leave your comments and questions below. Give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and continuing having fun with gel printing, and see us in our next Gel Printing Fundamentals episode. Have a crafty day.